Hi, and welcome back to Alignment by Tuva. And if you're new here, I just want to set the tone for today's episode. I want you to imagine you just stepping into a warm courtyard on a sunny afternoon. You know, the kind where the light, it feels soft, and there's just this quiet hum of conversations, familiar faces, and this sense of like taking a little bit of a deeper exhale. That is always the feeling I hope to create here. Just a place where we can slow down just enough to listen to our body and to understand ourselves more clearly and to learn how to live a way that feels aligned, not just in the mind, but in the nervous system. My name is Tuva. I am a somatic and subconscious alignment coach, and the work I do, both here and with the people I support, is centered around helping the body feel safe enough to live fully, safe enough to act, safe enough to rest, and safe enough to trust its own timing. And today's episode, it feels personal to me. Most does. But this one, because this is something I still notice in myself, even after years of doing this work, there's still this little voice, like a whisper in the background telling me to do more, to be productive, to fill the space, and to optimize the time that I have, even when nothing urgent is happening, even when I am on vacation, when there's finally space, when my calendar is fully open. Instead of relaxing, my mind starts to search, what should I do? What else can I fit in? And what would make this time more useful? You can recognize that, right? And that feeling, that doing nothing, almost feels uncomfortable, like stillness needs to be justified. And I see this everywhere right now. We live in a world where even rest has become scheduled. Our vacations, they're packed with activities. Our weekends are filled with plans. So our free time, it becomes something we feel pressure to optimize. Not because we want to do it, but because somewhere along the way, we learned that being still means falling behind. And when you live this way for too long, you start to drift into two extremes. You either push yourself constantly, like forcing yourself forward by staying busy, by staying productive, until the body eventually says enough. Or the opposite, withdrawing, feeling stuck, unable to act. And not because you don't care, but because your system feels exhausted. And what I've come to understand through my own experience, through neuroscience, and through working with people is that real regulation, real nervous system intelligence doesn't live in either of those extremes. It lives in the space between them, in the ability to know when to rest and when to act, and not based on pressure, not based on guilt, but based on awareness, based on what your nervous system actually needs. And today, I want to teach you how to recognize that, how to feel the difference between true rest and shutdown, between inspired action and forced movement. Because once you understand this, something shifts. So you stop guessing, you stop swinging between burnout and inaction. And instead, you begin to move through life with discernment, with rhythm, with trust. Most people do not struggle because they are lazy. That is one of the biggest myths I wish we could retire completely. What I see again and again is not laziness. It is oscillation between two extremes, two very familiar ways of living that look different on the surface, but feel surprisingly similar inside the body. I'm going to paint you a picture so you can see this difference. On one side, there is the world of constant output, the life that looks productive from the outside. The calendar is filled from morning to evening. Notification is lighting up your phone. You have your coffee in one hand and your laptop on the other. You're answering the emails while eating your breakfast. You're listening to a podcast while you're driving. And you're thinking about the next task while finishing the current one. Always doing, always pushing, always moving. And from the outside, it can look impressive, disciplined, ambitious, capable, but inside the body, it often feels like pressure, like a low hum of urgency that never fully turns off. So you keep going, even when your shoulders feel tight, even when your breath feels shallow, and even when your body whispers, I'm tired. But the mind says just one more thing. Just finish this first. Just push a little longer. And eventually, that kind of living, it leads to burnout. It doesn't do it all of a sudden, but it builds up gradually, just like a candle that keeps burning without ever being blown out. And then on the other side, there is the opposite extreme, which is withdrawal, stillness, but not the nourishing kind of stillness. This is the version of stillness that wakes up knowing what needs to be done, but you feel heavy. You feel sluggish, disconnected, like you sit down to start something and instead you begin scrolling your phone. And not because you don't care, but because your nervous system doesn't have the energy to act. And this is where people often judge themselves the most. They think, what is wrong with me? Why can't I just do it? But what I see over and over again is that this state is not laziness. It is exhaustion. It is what happens when the system has been pushed too hard for too long without enough recovery. And the pattern that emerges between these two states is almost rhythmic, but not in a healthy way. You push until exhaustion and you collapse until guilt, and then you push again until breakdown. You go all in and then you fall all the way out and you force yourself forward and you feel stuck in a place. And this is not lack of discipline, but this is practical example of your nervous system is swinging between survival modes. And this took me years to understand that neither of those extremes creates sustainable growth. Not endless output and not complete shutdown. Real growth happens in rhythm, in movement that knows when to pause, in effort that knows when to soften, and in action followed by restoration, in movement followed by recovery. Just like walking, left foot, right foot, forward, but balanced. Not force, not avoidance, but discernment. Learning to feel, is this a moment to move or a moment to rest? Because the wisdom is not in doing more, and it is not in doing nothing, it is in knowing the difference. And now this is where neuroscience gives language to something many of us have felt, but maybe never fully understood. Because what we experience as motivation, exhaustion, clarity, or shutdown is not random. It is physiological. According to polyvagal theory, which is one of the frameworks we use to understand the nervous system, we move between different states throughout the day. Not once, not twice, but dozens of times. And each time changes how we think, how we feel, how we act, and how we rest. Let's start with ventral vagal. This is the state we ideally return to again and again. Not because it is perfectly calm, but because it is grounded, open, present, capable. And I always like to explain this state through a situation, not just a definition. So imagine this. You are at a live event. Maybe it is a gathering, a workshop, or something where there is energy in the room. People are talking, there is movement, there is sound, the room is alive. But inside your body, you are steady. You feel steady. Your breath moves fully, like in and out, without effort, and your shoulders feel relaxed. Your eyes are engaged, you're noticing details, you're listening clearly. You feel connected, you are not overwhelmed, you are not shut down, you're just present. And maybe at that event, someone hands you a microphone, or asks you a question, or invites you to step forward. And instead of panic, there's a sense of readiness. Not urgency, not pressure, but willingness. You feel capable. You're not rushed. You're not frozen. You are just ready. That is ventral vagal. That is what action from safety feels like. Not forced, not chaotic, but grounded. Like movement that comes from stability and not from survival. And this is the state where creativity lives, where connection happens, where meaningful action becomes possible. And not because you are calm all the time, but because your system, it feels safe enough to move. Now, let's shift the scene. Imagine it is late afternoon, you're working against a deadline. Your phone just keeps buzzing. Emails keep arriving, and there is a list of things that you still have not finished. And suddenly you feel your body change. Like your thoughts speed up, your breath becomes more short and more shallow, and your jaw tightens without you noticing, and your shoulders creep upward. There's urgency now, like pressure, a sense that time is slipping away. And here is the important part. Sometimes this state helps. Sympathetic activation is not bad. It is what helps you move quickly. It is what helps you focus intensely and respond to demands. It is what gives you energy when something matters. But when you stay in sympathetic mode for too long, that helpful energy shifts. Action stops feeling inspired and starts feeling forced. You still move, you still produce, but there is tension underneath it. You act, but without ease. You push, but without presence. And over time, this kind of sustained urgency begins to drain the system, like running a car engine at high speed without ever letting it idle. And eventually, something overheats. And if this sympathetic state continues long enough without recovery, the nervous system does something protective. It shifts into dorsal vagal shutdown. And this is where things often becomes confusing. Because from the outside, it can look like rest, but inside the body, it feels very different. So imagine waking up in the morning and you know what needs to be done during that day. There are responsibilities waiting for you, ideas you once cared about, and things you genuinely want to move forward. But your body, it feels heavy and not peacefully still, but it feels like weighted down, like moving through thick water. Your mind feels foggy and your limbs feel slow. And even small tasks feel overwhelming. You sit down to start, but instead you just stare or you scroll or you drift away. And not because you don't care, not because you lack the discipline, but because your body has run out of resources. This is not rest. This is depletion. And here is something incredibly important to understand. Many people mistake dorsal vagal shutdown for rest. They think, I just need to relax. I just need more time off. But time alone doesn't restore shutdown. Because true rest restores energy. Shutdown drains it. True rest feels warm, nourishing, restorative. Shutdown feels flat, heavy, disconnected. And learning to feel the difference between those two states is one of the most powerful skills that you can develop. Because once you understand this, you stop confusing exhaustion with recovery, and you stop mistaking stillness for healing. And you begin to see what your nervous system is actually asking for. So this is where the real question begins. Not should I act or should I rest, but something much more precise, something much more honest. One of the most important questions you can ask yourself is, why am I taking action right now? Are you moving because something inside you feels open, or because something inside you feels pushed? Because action itself is not the problem. We've been taught to fear burnout, to question productivity, and to wonder if doing more is dangerous. But action in itself is not harmful. The nervous system is built to move, to create, to respond, to engage with life. The real difference is not in the action. It is in the energy behind the action. And once you begin noticing that, you start seeing patterns that were invincible before. Action from inspirations feel very different in the body. There's movement, but there is space around the movement. You sit down to work and your body feels steady. Not perfectly calm, maybe, but it is available. Your breath moves freely. Your mind feels focused. There's a sense of curiosity or willingness. Even if the task is challenging, there is a readiness inside of you. You might feel energy in your body, but it is clean energy, like stepping into something you are ready for, not something you are trying to escape. And this is where many people misunderstand action. They think inspiration means excitement or passion or big emotions, but often inspired action feels simple, grounded, clear. Like your body saying, yeah, this feels right to move toward. Now, compare that to action that comes from force. You sit down to work, but your chest feels tight, your breath feels shallow, and your thoughts are racing ahead of your body. And you are not moving because you feel ready. You're moving because you feel pressure. Pressure to perform, pressure to prove, pressure to avoid falling behind. And inside, there is often a fear of failure, a fear of judgment, a fear of being seen as unproductive. So you push, you keep on going, even when your body is resisting. And this is where burnout often begins. Not because you acted, but because you acted from pressure instead of presence. And here's something I have learned, both through my own life and through working with others. The body always knows the difference. It knows the difference before the mind does. The mind can justify anything. The mind can say, this has to get done. I don't have time to rest. I will feel better once this is finished. But the body speaks in sensations, in tension, in breath, in posture, in signals that tell you this feels aligned or this feels forced. And learning to feel that difference inside your body is where discernment begins. Not in the mind, not in logic, but in awareness. And maybe this is something you can even notice today. Like the next time you reach your phone or open your laptop or start another task, pause for just a moment and ask yourself, am I moving from openness or from pressure? Not to judge yourself, not to stop acting, but to notice. Because awareness is what creates choice, and choice is what creates regulation. But something that can look like rest on the outside, because something that can look like rest on the outside, inside the body, can feel very different. Many people think they are resting, when in reality they are shutting down. And the difference between those states can completely change how your life unfolds. And I just want to mention this more clearly, that something that feels like rest on the outside, inside it can feel very different. Many people, they are thinking that they are resting, when in reality they are shutting down. But the difference between those two states can completely change how your life unfolds. True rest, it restores. Shutdown removes capacity. They are not the same. I'm going to paint you a picture of how shutdown looks like. So you're coming home, maybe you've had a long day, and your body, it feels tired and your mind feels full. And you're just seeing your couch and like, oh, I'm gonna lay down and I'm gonna rest for a little bit. You're thinking, I just need to relax. So you open your phone and you scroll for a few minutes, then a few more minutes. And then all of a sudden, 1 hour has passed, maybe 2 hours. And instead of feeling restored, you feel heavier, more disconnected, more foggy. You are not refreshed. You're not energized. Now you're just numb. And this is where the confusion lies, because from the outside, it looks like rest. You're lying there, you're on your phone, you're sitting still, you're not working, you're not pushing. But inside the nervous system, something very different is happening. It is not restoration, it is withdrawal, which is not recovery, but disengagement. And shutdown doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks very ordinary, just like that. You are scrolling endlessly, even when you don't enjoy what you are watching. You're avoiding decisions because choosing feels overwhelming. You're leaving your messages unanswered, and not because you don't care, but because you don't have the energy to respond. You're just stuck in the same place because your system feels flooded. And here's the important part in this. This is not laziness. This is not weakness. This is the nervous system protecting itself when it feels overwhelmed. It is a survival response. It is not a character flaw. Now, let's compare that to what true rest actually feels like. True rest feels nourishing. Not dramatic, not complicated, just restorative. After true rest, your body feels softer. Your breath deepens, your mind feels clearer, you are not hyper productive, you're not instantly motivated, but you are available again. There's a return of energy, just that readiness to move. And this is one of the most important signs, that rest restores your ability to act, while shutdown removes your ability to move. Rest feels like filling up the tank. Meanwhile, shutdown feels like you are sitting in a car with an empty tank and hoping it will somehow just start again. And if you are unsure which one you are experiencing, the body always tells the truth. So after that 1 hour of scrolling, ask yourself, do I feel clearer or do I feel more foggy? Do I feel warmer or do I feel more heavy? Do I feel more connected or do I feel more distant? Because true rest, it creates presence, while shutdown creates disconnection. And learning to feel that difference is one of the most powerful shifts that you can make in your life. Because that will help you to rest in ways that actually restore you. Because if you mistake shutdown for rest, you never fully recover. You will stay tired, you will stay stuck, and you will begin believing something is wrong with you. When in reality, your nervous system hasn't been given the kind of rest it actually needs. Not distraction, not avoidance, but restoration. But once you understand all of this, you begin choosing rest differently, with more intention, more honestly, and more respectfully. You actually start to see it as a way of recovery instead of a way to escape your reality. So now, instead of just continuing talking about this, I want to give you something you can actually experience. It's simple. It is something you can come back to, not just today. Like, you can come back to this anytime you feel unsure whether to move or to rest. Because discernment isn't something you think your way into. It is something you feel your way into. So wherever you are right now, you don't need to change anything, okay? If you're walking, if you're sitting, if you're laying down, you don't need to sit perfectly still. Just soften your attention for a moment. If you can, let your feet connect with the ground. Notice where your body meets the surface beneath you. The chair, the floor, the couch. Feel the weight of your body being supported. Not held up, just supported. And already here, something begins to shift, because the nervous system listens to contact, to pressure, to support. Let your shoulders just soften a little, not forcing relaxation, just allowing space. Now bring your attention to your breath, not changing it, not controlling it, just noticing it. Is it shallow, fast, heavy, maybe deep, gentle? There is no right answer here, just information. Because your breath is one of the most clear signals of your nervous system state. Your breath is your feedback. And now, this is the part that matters the most. Ask yourself, what state am I in right now? Not intellectually, but physically. Do I feel open? Or do I feel tight? Am I light or heavy? Am I clear or foggy? There's no need to label it perfectly. Just notice whatever comes up, because awareness always comes before change. And now, ask yourself one more question. What does my body need right now? Does it need movement or stillness? Not what your mind thinks you should do, not what your schedule says, but what your body is quietly asking for. Maybe it needs movement. Maybe it needs a walk, a stretch, a shift in posture. Or maybe it needs stillness, a pause, a moment of doing less. And sometimes it needs both. Movement first and then rest, or rest and then movement. This is the dance. And here's what I want you to understand. This doesn't take 20 minutes. It doesn't require a perfect environment. It can happen in 30 seconds. You can do this check-in before you are sending an email, before you're starting a task, before you're saying yes to something. You pause, you feel, and you listen. And then you move from awareness instead of reaction. And over time, this simple check-in becomes something powerful and reliable, like building a relationship with your body. You're not forcing anything. You're not ignoring it. You are learning to hear it. There's something I want to say here that might challenge what many of us have been taught, because most of us grew up believing that growth comes from effort, from pushing harder, from doing more, or staying consistent at all costs. That if you want results, you simply need to increase output, like more hours, more discipline, more force. But the truth, both biologically and psychologically, is very different. Growth does not come from constant action. It comes from sustainable action. And sustainable action, it requires recovery, not occasionally, not when you collapse, but you need that recovery consistently. If you look at how the body actually grows, like it never happens during strain. Muscle don't grow while you're lifting your weights. They grow after, during recovery. The strengthening happens in the space that follows effort, when the system repairs, when the tissue rebuilds, when the nervous system recalibrates. And the same is true for your mind, for your energy, your nervous system. You do not grow because you push harder. You grow because you recover better. And this is where many people unknowingly sabotage themselves. They believe they are being productive, but what they are actually doing is draining their system faster than they can rebuild it. They stack action on top of action and task on top of task and output on top of output without creating space for restoration. And at first, this can look successful. You get your things done and you move forward, you produce. But underneath, the nervous system begins to accumulate fatigue, which is not always visible and it's not always dramatic, but it is building quietly until one day The smallest task feels overwhelming. The simplest decision feels heavy. And motivation, the thing you once relied on, it disappears. And not because you lack discipline, but because your system ran out of capacity. Sustainable growth looks very different from what we see online. It is not constant intensity, it is rhythm. It is periods of effort followed by intentional recovery. It is movement followed by restoration. Not collapse-driven rest, but planned recovery. Because when recovery becomes part of the process, not an emergency response, everything changes. Your energy stabilizes, your clarity improves, your ability to act becomes more reliable. And it builds steadiness, and steadiness is what builds longevity. So maybe productivity is not about how much you can do in a day. Maybe productivity is about how well your nervous system can sustain effort over time. Not just today, not just this week, but months, years, a lifetime. Because real growth is not measured by how hard you can push, but by how well you can recover and return again and again and again. Stronger, clearer, more capable, not burned out, not depleted, but supported. And maybe the most powerful realization of today is that rest and action are not opposites. They are partners. They're not enemies. They're not competing forces. They are part of the same rhythm. Like breathing in and breathing out, like waves moving toward the shore and then returning to the ocean. Both are necessary. Both are intelligent. And learning when to move and when to pause is not something reserved for a few intuitive people. It is not a gift you either have or don't. It is a skill. It is a skill you build, moment by moment, signal by signal, choice by choice. And the more you begin paying attention to your body, to your breath, and to those subtle differences between force and readiness, the more something begins to shift. You start to pause for a second before acting. You start to notice tension before pushing through it. And you start to feel heaviness before collapsing into avoidance. And slowly you start recognizing your own patterns, and you are not judging them. You're not fighting them. You're just seeing them. And when you see them, you gain something so incredibly powerful. You gain choice. Because once you can see the difference between pressure and readiness, you don't have to guess anymore. You don't have to rely on guilt or productivity pressure or external expectations. You begin to trust your timing, your rhythm, your pace. And I truly hope that today's episode gave you something tangible, something you can feel, and something that you can return to when you are unsure whether you should push forward or step back. Because understanding your nervous system is not about becoming perfectly regulated. It is not about always staying calm and always being still. And it's definitely not about getting it right every time. It is about becoming responsive and flexible and capable of adjusting when life changes, capable of moving forward when energy is available, and resting when restoration is needed. Not from fear, but from wisdom. Not from pressure, but from awareness. And maybe today you don't need to change everything. Maybe you don't need to fix your schedule or overhaul your routine. Maybe the only thing to begin with is noticing. Noticing when you push, noticing when you pause, and noticing when your body is asking for movement and when it is asking for stillness. And before we close today, I just want to say that I truly, truly, truly hope that you learned something tangible today, something simple enough to use, and something powerful enough to change how you move through your days. Because this is not about doing more. It is about doing what matters at the right time for your body. Thank you so much for staying until the end. And until next time, stay aligned, stay curious, and most importantly, stay true to yourself.